I'm Jamie, that's Mike, for anyone who is confused. Mike, thank you for joining us. Welcome back. This is one of those moments in the world where there's so much to talk about. The velocity of change, the geopolitical issues, the potential economic impact of those issues, fundamental technology, acceleration. It's just an exciting time. You've been a great partner to Samant and I as we built March Capital with your son for the first decade, and then as an investor in us as we continue to scale. And we've always had both the privilege and benefit of your insights, perspectives, and challenging intellect. He's one of the smartest people. I always go and I think, God, there's like 3 things that worry me, and Mike's going to ask me about them because he figures it out much more quickly than I do. So it's just always been an absolute formative experience for us over the...
I'm looking forward to the 3rd decade, Jim.
Well, thank you. Yeah, Gene Sykes says we're going to have the Olympics back in America in the 40s, so we're sticking around for that. Okay, so today we talked about focusing on trends and the financial forces reshaping where opportunity sits. What does that mean for the founders, investors, executives, and others in the room, and are still filing in? Where would you like to start? I think immigration, human capital, that's the most important thing. All the companies today, I think you're ready to go. Human capital.
So I think if we can just ground ourselves, Jamie, there's a lot going on. Your opening yesterday morning, yours and Samant was great. But this is the little formula that I wrote in '65 at Berkeley, which really said the world's largest asset, human capital, potential social capital, the world's second. If we could bring capital to people with new ideas and abilities, something you do at March, it would have a multiplier effect. And people that desire access to capital will gravitate to those parts of the world where it's available, and the United States has benefited greatly from it, particularly over the last 50 to 60 years. So I think if we ground ourselves in that, number 2 is just understanding how large this asset is. As a number of you probably know, Gary Becker won a Nobel Prize in 1992 for this concept. And so it's estimated that the social and human capital of the U.S. is anywhere from 2,000 to 3,000 trillion. Our financial assets are about 250 trillion. So it's 8 to 12 times, and it's 70 times plus the economy. And so we're so focused on things like balance of payments or other types of things, and not really focus on this movement of human capital, and with it, the movement of money with it today. And the U.S. has historically, for probably almost 200 years, been the major beneficiary of hundreds of trillions of human capital coming to this country. Best exhibited, the most valuable company in our country, as you know, is NVIDIA, a young man from Taiwan. And so we can ask that question today: would he come here? Could he have built NVIDIA today in 2026? And so when you look at the most valuable companies in the world today, 80% plus are all here in the United States at this time. And there's heavy tech, obviously, on the top 10 here. One of the things I mentioned to you 2 years ago, Jamie, that if you had this strategy when I was looking at your CEOs,
yes,
that if you replace a US-born CEO with an Indian CEO, that's all you have to do. No due diligence, anything. So I thought we'd create this slide for you here.
Now, that only works in America. They tried it in Great Britain, and it didn't go so well.
So Micron, 13 and a half times. Microsoft, 9.7 times. Google, 7.9 times. And so when you're looking at the value of Microsoft and Google today, almost all that value was created when they hired a guy that was born in India to become their CEO. And even IBM, half the value is after they changed CEOs. And so you see it in so many ways, and you can't come to your conference, Jamie, without feeling it, seeing it firsthand.
Taiwan, Korea, China, India, and various other countries around the world, South America. And
so when you look at this issue and say, what about the future of the U.S.? People are worried we now have, let's say 40 trillion in debt. It was my feeling in January of last year that you could pay off that debt by offering, quote, what's become a gold card. They've kind of dropped the ball on that effort, but if 10 million millionaires came to the U.S. and gave you $4 million each, that's 40 trillion. And so when you look at the movement of people, where they're moving, people move.
yeah,
That you think they're great. Jim Clark wrote a book, Good to Great. All right? Now, 3 of those companies of his 11 great companies have already gone bankrupt. And people underestimate, they were great, and he has a level 5 manager as a good successor. But they were great because of their leader at that time. And so let's take a look at 2 examples that I love. One is Netflix versus Blockbuster. Blockbuster turned out to be worth 0. The stockholders got 0. The creditors got 2 cents. Netflix offered itself to Blockbuster for $50 million. $50 million. I turned it down. And what's another one of the great companies that Jim had was Circuit City. And Best Buy offered itself to Circuit City for $50 million. Circuit City turned it down. Circuit City isn't in business anymore. So when I see your CEOs pick, and actually, if you say to me, Jamie, what's your secret sauce? Everyone has changes. What's amazed me is your ability to bring a new CEO in and reposition the company. And most times it doesn't work, and we saw a few of them here, the enormous turnaround you created. So
it's all about human capital. I think the comment you made the other day is the GDP of the Cuban immigrants to Florida is equivalent to the GDP of Cuba, which I think,
well,
here you go, yeah.
I think people don't really understood when the Iron Curtain came down what occurred.
Yeah.
1 million people just going to Israel. 1 million to Israel. And they also went to Europe, U.S., etc.
We have Michael Reitblatt from Forder, a young boy and growing up in Moscow, family immigrated to Israel, built a world-class AI company. Yeah.
So there was a young guy named Sergey Brin that was born in Moscow, among others. And so if you assume that intellect is evenly distributed in the world, but opportunity isn't, the advantage the U.S. has had is people have chose the U.S. for opportunity, but also access to capital. And when I mentioned to you last year, might even run it, if you ever need kind of to rethink how important immigration is to the U.S., watch President Reagan's last speech in the White House. You can just Google it and up it'll come.
Yeah.
And it renews our interest. Immigrants are more likely to form businesses, be entrepreneurial than others. And so we are so dependent on the U.S., on immigrants, And there is not one graduate degree in science in the U.S. today where the majority of students were born in the United States. And I don't see PhDs in AI up there, but I think it's 77% were not born here. And so this transfer of hundreds of trillions of dollars, and now the question is that going to continue in the future?
Exactly. And what should a policy be? You know, what does a rational immigration policy be where if some countries get it, maybe do a better job than we do, in Australia or Canada or that?
Well, we can see they form great companies. You can't be at your summit here without seeing them when they stand up to talk, etc. I think the other challenge we have is we have the wrong metrics. So when you're so hung up on balance of payments.
Yeah.
So for the last 3 years, the most millionaires have gone to the UAE. Used to be US, now the UAE. It hasn't been bad. You have unlimited capital there, more than $2 trillion in investable funds, a very strong educational system for expats, rule of law, a bunch of things. But number 2 they go to is the US, number 3, Singapore. Those red circles there, where do they come from? Come from China, they come from Russia, they come from India, and now they come from UK. And so you change tax policies, things change, and I think there's 250,000 Brits now in the UAE and Madrid. Madrid has become a suburb.
And Italy, yeah, flat tax.
So that's...
We are.
So, and it's the same in the US. 5 of the 6 wealthiest people in the world used to live in California. None of them now live in California. And so you're going to charge them 5% of their net worth. You know, if we added it up, we're missing Larry Ellison on that slide. But it's $1.5 trillion with 5 people times 5%, that's 75 billion. There is no 75 billion from this wealth tax. And today we saw that example again, Jamie, that Washington passed a tax on millionaires. And this morning Howard Schultz announced he's moving, just bought a house in Florida. And Starbucks is moving its headquarters to Nashville. So people move. And if you want an historic look, we could look at Seattle.
Yeah.
So if you go back and look in Seattle, the real key to Seattle was a company called Boeing. In the 60s, they had 108,000 employees in Seattle, highly educated engineers, etc. And they announced they're leaving Seattle. And this was a real sign in Seattle. Will the last person leaving Seattle turn out the lights? Okay, so it was predicted that was kind of going to be the end of Seattle. But it wasn't, because 4 people, among others, decided to live in Seattle. Bill Gates went back to Seattle. Howard Schultz moved to Seattle. Craig McCaw left Stanford, went back to Seattle. And Jeff Bezos went to Seattle. And if you look at per capita income in Seattle with those 4 companies compared to the US, but people move. They move from the UK to Italy. And they particularly move when they get access to capital. So we're going to see the changes, dramatic changes that are occurring. So people leave Russia, they leave China, and we really underestimated the value of our social and human capital, or the attraction to it, today.
So how do we, I mean, the president, through Trump accounts, is looking at long-term human capital and wealth, addressing wealth disparity. AI creates a lot of opportunities, and maybe AI, in fact, increases by 50 or 100% our human capital number.
Well, I don't know. I listened to your opening talk about the scientific method, and I'm going to have a lot of competition after listening to what's going on with AI today.
Well,
But I've been
productivity,
disintermediated
yeah.
many times.
Yeah.
You know, the calculator.
Yeah.
I used to be able to calculate yields in my head.
GPS rather than, memorizing a map, trying to remember phone numbers. I'd factor a phone number to remember it, Yeah.
So, I mean, to me, the challenge is, what do people want?
Yeah.
What is that dream? And I think you've just touched on it. You want economic mobility. You want these abilities. So we have this program, our Economic Mobility Alliance. You live in a democracy. The majority of people work that also vote, and they can vote anywhere they choose. And so the U.S. grew heavily due to tech and other things, and companies you finance like CrowdStrike, that we have this enormous variance today between average net worth and median net worth.
Yeah.
And so the U.S. has the highest average net worth in the world today. And it has a relatively low median net worth. You can see Australia, a country you have a strong attachment to, has 100% higher median net worth than the U.S. And that's due, as you know, Jamie, to superannuation.
Yeah.
So the question is, can we create things similar to that? And the president in his State of the Union mentioned what we would like to call American Dream retirement accounts, following up on the Invest in America program.
Mm-hmm.
And whereas the government is only putting $1,000 for every child born, we think 50 to 100 billion will come. Michael Dell committed $6.25 billion for 25 million kids, and others have committed. Ray Dalio's pledged 75 million for the kids in Connecticut, and many companies have now pledged, so that when they buy the S&P 500, they can run around and saying, they own part of Microsoft or Apple or your company, CrowdStrike.
Your company, Roxanne. Well, I mean, this is incredible that you would have a number of citizens who would put up 15, 20, $25 billion to match this, to go back in time with Dell for people who were born maybe over the last decade who maybe would have missed this opportunity otherwise. And then, for us to be able at March Capital even to, or, anyone, you can write it off. And I mean, it's just an incredible program, but it takes time to compound. So let's talk about, I don't know, we can talk about what you opened last year, the Milken Center for the American Dream. I mean, it's impressive as all. I really recommend everyone to see it, and if you can take the next gen to see it as well. And I was struck by the displays downstairs on financial literacy, health, and education has been the key to success.
And the entrepreneur and innovation. So,
well, yeah, okay.
Yes, those are the pillars. But when you look at how do you build human capital, it's not that hard. It's either education. You don't show that you're more valuable as you get educated and you create skills. Number two, you live longer and you're healthier. And medical research and health is accountable for more than 50% of all economic growth in the last 200 years, or immigration. And so when you think all the people that have come to the U.S. and have moved here, how we've benefited from it. But all the surveys in the last 12 years come up with the same thing, Jamie. What is essential to achieve your dream? Freedom to live your life. Freedom to live your life. 84% or something say that. And about a third of people in America say they've achieved their dream, whatever their dream might be. About a third think they're on their way, and about a third thinks they're never going to achieve that. And so obviously you built that center first to give hope to those that think they're never going to achieve their dream. Also to reset what is that dream. The media has been very focused telling you the dream is about money. But in these surveys, the least essential thing to achieve your dream is considered personal wealth. Only about 1 in 6 will tell you it's personal wealth. Now, the third level here is comfortable retirement. So obviously some money is required. But most people in the United States that were born here, etc., don't fully realize what freedom means. And the freedom to do something new, the freedom to try. And what the United States is the most unique in is the freedom to fail and try again. I don't know, Jamie, you have better numbers than me, but my guess is most of the people that have built these great companies or you finance, this wasn't the first try.
No.
I know when I wanted to hire a trader, I didn't want to hire a trader who never lost money because I knew I'd lose a fortune on my watch.
Yeah.
And so you learn a lot more on things, but you can see here just what people think, not what people tell you you should think.
Yeah.
And so to me, when they walk into March, you're giving them a chance, a hope to their dream. Build a company, an idea. I know we have 6 floors over at our headquarters here in LA, and we have a lot of people who should be on the lower floor that we give away money come to the higher floors where we invest. And some of them we have to explain. In our opinion, that idea belongs on the charitable floors, not the for-profit floors.
Well, this is a great picture of the Milken Center in Washington. On the left is the Treasury Building, and behind the Treasury Building is the White House. This is before the East Wing is superimposed. I think the president's going to turn that into a hockey ring. He was so infatuated with the hockey
Well, you're
team.
talking about the new ballroom that's going there.
The ballroom, a hockey ring ballroom, whatever he decides to do with it. But look at the positioning. Across the street from Treasury, Pennsylvania Avenue is now closed off. It has been for a number of years now. And the old Riggs Bank, it's just a beautiful location and a stunning building.
Well, there's 6. It's a building.
6 buildings. It's a whole block. Yeah.
I do think there's other challenges. If you say to me, what is the greatest weakness in investing in many ways today? It's not understanding demographics and what the unbelievable changes that are going on in the world and will go on because you cannot reverse what's occurred.
Right.
There is nothing that China is going to be able to do that's going to stop their population losing hundreds of millions of people. And so when you think that China used to have 30 million kids born in 1 year, and now last year it looks like it's around 8 million. Well, 8 million, if life expectancy was 80, 8 times 80 is 640 million people from 1.4 billion. And so no country ever had as many people as China's going to lose except India in the history of the world. And Korea woke up one day and now they're worried, can they field a military?
Yeah.
Okay, their birth rate has gone from 6 to 0.7. Can they even field a military?
How do you have 0.7 of a baby? I haven't figured that out.
Well, you want me,
Maybe 25% of it's a robot, huh? These are hybrids.
well, you have 3 women.
3 women, okay. 2 babies
And it
between 3
averages
women.
out.
All right, I got it. Yeah.
You know,
It's
but
like the inverse of Utah. Yeah.
well, you probably, okay, so you're financing in Korea today. What are you going to do? Well,
You're going to build
gonna
robots.
be,
Yeah.
no, you're going to be probably in the dog carriage business, okay? You got more dog strollers now in Korea than baby strollers,
Wow.
okay? And if you're if you're going to Japan, you want to be in
adult diapers and dog
that's right.
strollers.
You want to be in the adult diaper business, not the kid diaper business, right?
That's the trade.
So it's just such a change in the U.S. If you'd be surprised today, in both Japan and Korea, the majority of women do not intend to have a child in their lifetime. We're talking to someone. But if you look today at the United States, in the last survey here at the end of last year, they asked 45% of women said they do not plan to have a
It
child.
was the day after Christmas. Maybe they're in a bad mood. 12/26.
And you think that's the case?
I mean, I don't know. Maybe they gave him a better Christmas present. You would have got a little. I'm in the 60s. Yeah. No, that's quite a stunning number. 25%. It just seems. I mean, so why is that? I mean, is it too hard, too expensive, too many other demands? You know, you double click on that.
If you look at it, I'd say it's 3 reasons. One, the more educated women become, the less children you have.
Yeah.
And so you see, this is your example of that. As you're going to college, more women go to college, your fertility rate drops. The second, and maybe even more important, is health care.
Yeah.
So
The cost of healthcare, or just
there was a day, if you went to the 20th century at the beginning, 1 in 2 children died before their 5th birthday. You want to have 3 kids, you needed to start with 6. In the U.S., 20% of all kids died before. And so you've had such dramatic changes, and you're seeing it in sub-Saharan Africa, where the largest percentage of AIDS or HIV in the world was. So you had 90+% chance of giving AIDS to your child. Now you have 90% chance of not. And I think people don't really fully understand the dramatic change that's occurred in the world with women in college. I think in the Middle East today, there's more women in college than men as a percentage of the population here. So
in the Middle East too.
Yeah. So it has dramatically changed.
So 78% in Saudi.
And so education, healthcare, and income. In the book Factfulness, which I recommend to anyone.
Hans Rousing.
He pointed out that even when per capita income goes to 2,000, the birth rate dramatically starts to drop. And so you were on it with the cost of having a kid, Jamie, and that in China, they have done everything to try to get their birth rate up, and it's gone straight down, and it continues to go down. And their premier has done a number of things, like reducing people that go to English education. At one point, 55% of everyone in the middle class went to English language schools after school. They then made it illegal for a person who's not Chinese to teach. And so you're trying to reduce the cost of having a kid. On the other hand, you have people giving you incentives to have children. But Iran, it was unbelievable. They've dropped faster than any other country. They went from like 6 to 1 point something in just a short period of time. And so I don't think people have really focused as much on demographics and what's going to happen. You have 2 people die in Japan for everyone born. Now you have about 2.5 people die for everyone born. Eventually, that's going to affect your business, your customers. You can buy residential real estate in rural areas for almost nothing in Japan because the young people all want to live in cities.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, we've talked about it a few times, Jamie, the explosion of individuals and children in sub-Saharan Africa. There's going to be 1 billion or 1.5 billion more kids, 19 of the 20 countries with the highest birth rate. There's Nigeria for you. When you think that's the number of kids that were born in Nigeria, it's more than all of North America by far, all of South America, and all of Europe, plus Russia. So
I won't even touch that one, so.
you can touch it, Jamie. I'm sure you got some comment there.
No. But so that's almost equivalent to China then, at 7.5 million births.
The
right?
UN is projecting that Nigeria will have more people than China at the end of the century.
Yeah.
So they might not be in Nigeria, they might be in the US,
Yeah.
they might be other places, but
There's still,
I think someday March is going to be financing some entrepreneurs in Nigeria.
yeah. So where does this take us long-term to the United States? You know, in terms of, I mean, there's probably, we'd have almost zero population growth without immigration.
We have got to get immigration right.
Yeah.
Okay? I mean, here's your chart. I don't want you to ask any questions that we can't get an answer right here for. Mm-hmm. But you can see here, no immigration, you lose 1/3 of the people in the U.S. in this century.
Wow.
High immigration, you add 100 million, and you're pretty much stable at low or most likely here. And so we need to keep our social capital so the best and brightest want to come here. We need to make sure that they feel they have a chance, that they have access to capital. And we talk a lot about technology, Jamie, but you know, you could say that it's self-serving, but the creation of new financial instruments here in this country has created a lot of different businesses, and it's created a lot of jobs. People are worried about jobs in AI. If you look at the last 30 years of, say, the 20th century and step back, once you open capital markets to everyone with ability, you can see that small and medium businesses created 83 million jobs between 1970 and 24, and Fortune 500 companies back then created -4. So if you're a kid in Nigeria or Kenya and you've got a new idea, you know, the United States still looks to you like the best chance that you can create it here today. And hopefully it will in the future. And part of your efforts and my efforts are to make sure my grandkids and your kids grow up in a country that still believes in the free enterprise system.
Yeah. I mean, this tells the story here where the job growth is. So do you have a perspective on the outlook? I mean, a lot of talk on, you know, we fixate, you're right, we fixate on trade balances, but, you know, with interest rates, the debt, I mean, what metrics concern you when you look at the U.S. economy? I mean, obviously,
I think the number one metrics is the social capital, and do people want to come here? I still believe they do, and I still believe.
So if they want to come here, then that brings investment, that brings tax revenue, that brings innovation.
Right. Well, let's say you were visiting with Mukesh Ambani, and I think all of his grandchildren are U.S. citizens and Indian citizens. His children have come to the U.S. and they give birth here So his grandkids, or most of them, are U.S. citizens and Indian. How much is he going to be willing to pay for a golden pass that he can come and stay here? He spent, I don't know, $500 million to $1 billion on a wedding. Okay, so.
You ought to at least build a maternity ward. Cheryl, you got that? Yeah.
But I just think we underestimate what happens when a person moves.
Yeah.
When they move, they go out to dinner in the new location. They buy their clothes in the new location. They're likely to form a business. They buy houses. So it isn't just that you have a person move. When Nationwide bought Bank of America and moved their headquarters to Charlotte from San Francisco, if you wanted to recruit executives to come to Charlotte, they wanted to know, do you have an opera? What do you have in Charlotte? What are the arts? What is happening? And so their philanthropy and other things of the company had an increase in focus on Charlotte. The changes in Florida from just Ken Griffin and the others moving are dynamic. The medical center at the University of Miami has been upgraded tremendously from that standpoint. And so this makes a big difference. Here in California, we can look at these things in red. Where do people leave and go to another state? Well, you're looking at Texas at 8.8% increase, Florida 8.9% increase, North Carolina 7.3%. Where have they left? They've left California, Illinois, and New York for the most part, Louisiana here. But people not only move from the rest of the world here, but they move within our states here, and with them takes their entrepreneurship, their innovation, their new ideas that occur. And so these are big factors long term that change the face of the world. And when you look at how many companies in the U.S. have been founded by entrepreneurs, what percent of March's portfolio would you say you're
at least half, yeah. Either, and probably 80% if you go from first generation or parents came over, 80% would be. And yeah, here you go. Here's some many of the companies and Snowflake from France. There is hope.
If you look at,
that's why they left France. It wasn't.
If you look at
how do you say snowflake in French?
Those tech companies that are considered to be worth $1 billion. I
mean, it's so bad they wouldn't even sponsor the French Olympics. They're sponsoring the LA Olympics. So anyway, they left France for good. Anyway, keep going. Yeah.
Well, you got a lot of commentary here.
Yeah. Well, they come here for a reason, but what can we do in California? We had Matt sitting here, Matt Mahan yesterday, Adam Miller today, and they're like basically saying, look, if we're just like somewhat sensible. Like I go to San Francisco versus a year ago, so completely different feel. Clean, crime down, positive attitude, amazing investment in OpenAI and Anthropic. Place seems to be booming. And I go down the other night to Disney Hall, and I'm just thinking, God, I really don't want to walk very far downtown. And most of the donors have all left town on the wall. I mean, it's like, yeah, there you go, U-Haul. I mean, I don't think the donors at Disney Hall are driving a U-Haul, but I mean,
So what is the problem U-Haul has? They have one-way traffic.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah, I mean,
they're
it's like
leaving, but they don't have people coming back. So.
Yeah, but how do we? What is that? Is it regulation? Is it tax? Is it?
Well, you look at it yourself and ask yourself. There's 5 states where they leave, and there's 5 states that they're going to.
Not the weather. We got that.
I think one of the things that really energized me, Jamie, with that opening discussion on future of bioscience, how bioscience is going to work. And, you know, when we used to have Moore's Law, you know, think about Moore's Law, and it goes down. When you look at just the fact of sequencing your genome, going from 3 billion to a couple $100, and from 13 years to less than an hour or so, I mean, there's no telling what's going to have here. I mean, you can look at that as a comparison, how much more powerful it is that we're going to be able to deploy.
And it's just with Claude, it's even, you know, 10x on that. It's just extraordinary. The compute laws is completely parabolic.
So, Jamie, I'd like to see you and Samant. I finance my future little Jiminy Cricket on my shoulder, my little agent. I don't believe that it's very hard for a doctor to tell you what the latest is today, what was discovered. And so if you can find 9 billion cell phones, it just seems we all ought to be having our health advisor. We load our medical information. We load our clinical information. It gives us advice. And the same thing in education. There's no reason why everyone doesn't have their own education.
So what is it about health and education that make it resistant to change? It just has to get so bad it hits a breaking point, or I mean, you know, because so many markets have been disrupted. You know, travel.
Well, education, you have enormous resistance with unions, et cetera, to change. In healthcare, if I had to give you an example, 1993, Intuitive Surgical came up with this idea of minimally invasive surgery.
1993, was it?
Now, you are the world's leading surgeon. Everyone, you're admired, you went to school, you've done all these things, and now they're telling you you're going to be disintermediated unless you can learn how to operate robots, et cetera. And so what happened was they delayed the onset of Intuitive Surgical for almost 10 years. If you look at that stock, I think it's worth 180 billion or something today, but you're now going to lose your job unless you learn how to do minimally invasive surgeries. Today, the movement of focused ultrasound, non-invasive surgery, it's been approved for maybe 63 indications. So here's your choice. Do you want to have surgery or do you want to have not? And so Bones from Star Trek, in many cases, is close to being a reality. And so these are the challenges we see. If I'm going to lose my job, I'm going to resist change. But it's, you know, even Uber and Lyft were objecting to driverless cars. Okay. So these things, we're thinking of this year for the global conference that you have to take a Waymo. Okay, or
it's the most common car seen in Santa Monica now is a Waymo. There's a big station here on 14th and Broadway. If you haven't been there, I'll drive you over. It's incredible to see. You're
going to drive me, or am I going to call the Waymo?
We'll call a Waymo and go see it. Take me home, but they go there at night, and there's one guy in about 100 cars. He washes them down, and you know, it's fun. It's like a little kid in a candy store going to see this thing.
I was in a meeting in Chicago, Jamie, arriving late, and they're telling me we have to get the weak link out of transportation.
All right. Was the driver the weak link?
I let it go for about 3 or 4 minutes, and then I told them I apologize, I arrived late, but what is the weak link? They looked at me like, you know, are you from Mars? It's the human being. They eat, they sleep, they drink, they get distracted by the people on the street. They're listening to music, they're making phone calls. We got to get them out of the system here. And so it's just...
No, it's amazing. So think of what that would do for insurance policy. I mean, if you have autonomous driving and you agree to use it most of the time, like in a Tesla, much safer, should reduce the cost of car ownership, reduce premiums. Yeah, here we go. Here's some numbers of these compounded global self-driving. These are probably going to be higher than this. I mean, so it sounds to me like your biggest concern is that, we're going to kill the goose that lays the golden eggs. We're, the American dream, and why is that? Regulation, excess taxation, poor education. So I mean, it's kind of a wake-up call for all of us. But you've had a very series of successful careers, and you've left a legacy: capital markets and medical research, education. This in D.C. I guess we heard today what you expect the legacy to be, which is perpetuating the American dream. But for the founders, investors in the room, are still in the middle of building their own stories. What advice would you give them about shaping their legacy where they can make a big difference to this country?
I think you find those people that are successful have a passion for what they're doing, Jamie. I'm sure when they come to you to be financed, you want to make sure they have a passion. If you talk about it as a country, I want to make sure my children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren grow up in a country that people still want to come to and be to because they feel it's their best chance of hope. On the other side of the coin, I don't believe the world can take a movement of a couple billion people. So as a result, I think we're going to have to find a way to create jobs in sub-Saharan Africa. The mobile phone today allows you to see what life's like in Madrid. And if you're living in a village in Africa, you might decide that it's going to be a better life for your kids to move. And so I just think the world is dealt with immigration. We have to redefine our immigration policies, but we're going to have to create opportunities for people where they live also. So I think those would be two goals. I believe the people running their businesses, I always ask myself, is what you're doing considered to be positive for society or negative for society? In 1989, Philip Morris, now Altria, was the most valuable company in the world for a short period of time. It made a product, it had Marlboro, it made cigarettes. In 1939, they published medical research that it was not good for your health. But come 1986, Marlboro was still the most valuable brand in the world. But that wasn't the future. I think what Elon has done is he's had the wind to his back. Electric cars, let's go to space. Let's figure out if we can change transportation. And so to me, when you go to business school, you learn how do you finance a company? Who's the management? What's the industry? What's going on in the economy? What's going on in capital markets? But in the end, these valuations are often determined about what society thinks. Are you a positive force in society? If you're not, then regulation is coming. And if you are, then the wind's going to be to your back. So I think that, to me, for your entrepreneurs is, are they making life better for people? Is it easier? Will they make them more productive? If you are, then your companies should have great opportunities in the future.
All right.
If you're not, you'll probably get disintermediated.
Well, I think that's a great message. I mean, our entrepreneurs and everyone here works extraordinarily hard, and they're doing it with a purpose. But if we can take that purpose and go up one gear and think about our community, our schools, our hospitals, our education, the human capital, all those around us that really would make a difference. Mike, you've made that difference in my life. You've made that difference in many people's life. And I'd like to thank you for being here today and sharing your insights and perspectives.
And I want to thank you, Jamie. Your good performance allows us to fuel all those dreams.
Well, I do it with pleasure.
And based on your opening the other day, I'm going to see 2X. I'm going to see 3X.
Yeah, we're going for it, Mike. All right, hey, everyone, thank you very much. We have a... thank you.